Hello, everyone. Hello, Adventures with Sarah. This is Andrew Valone from Savor the Experience Tours. I'm once again hosting as Sarah is still on vacation, but she'll be back, I believe, later this week. Today, I figured, it's not. I know it's not Wines Day, so we're gonna do wines. Monday is gonna be Wines Day instead. So I thought I'd bring on a couple of, I want to say friends because they seem like I know them or I'm always chatting with them, but we actually haven't met in person. But I want to introduce Matthew and Shireen from Exotic Wine Travel. Hello.
Appreciate it. Hear us clearly, right?
Yeah.
Great.
So for those of you who've been on some of our tours, of course we do a lot in Croatia. Tonight we're going to cover exotic wine travel story, like how they got here and what they're doing in Croatia right now, and talk about the book they've written, which is, I believe, the first book on Croatian wines. And then they're going to go through different varietals so you get a better idea. I know some of you know some of these varietals, some of you don't. Some of you are interested in coming over here and checking it out. So we'll try to cover a lot of things. And they've got a few wines that we could taste as well. Well, virtually taste, of course. So yes. So why don't you guys start and tell us about yourself, because it's not like you. I know what in the last 5 or 6 years you've become exotic wine travel, and I'm not even sure how you got there.
Go ahead, you start.
Right. So we started traveling in 2015, and it was meant to be a sabbatical. And the trip started in the classic wine regions in Italy, in Spain, and in Portugal. And we moved to less known places like Turkey, Armenia, and so by the end of the year, we covered quite a lot of places. We also check our phone, our credit or wine related things. So we wanted to kind of like make the best use of our resources and also to share with other people, because in Georgia and also even in Barolo Barbaresco, we realized that there was pretty much a lack of information online in English. Well, sure, there are lots of pieces of information, but there wasn't anything comprehensive. So we wanted to create like a source, a guidebook for people who are exploring wine country. And because we started off as a traveler first, so we're really inspired by. Are you familiar with Lonely Planet Guide?
I think everyone is. That was like the first thing I ever
Yeah,
bought before I came to Europe.
Or Rick Steves.
Yeah,
Or Rick Steves guy.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
sounds
so we-
familiar.
So basically, we wanted to create like a guidebook that is something of that sort, like a Lonely Planet, where you can pick up the book, you can just take bits and pieces from the book, and then you can guide yourself through the country through wines.
We started out as consumers and enthusiasts when we were living in Singapore before. I'm American, Shireen is Singaporean. I lived in Singapore. When we started traveling, by the time we got to Turkey, Georgia, and Armenia, Shireen made the suggestion that she said, when she looked at our credit card statement and said, "Oh my gosh, look where all our money's going." That's when we decided, hey, maybe we should write about some of these unique, exciting wine regions. There's plenty of amazing stories, amazing people, and we're new to the industry. Shireen's a Burgundy lover. I'm a Barolo lover, but as new face, no experience in wine, you can't just go in guns blazing, covering those regions.
So it's a little bit of a practical choice, but it was also a very, we saw the gap in the industry, and we realized that there wasn't anyone or really just focusing purely on lesser known wine regions. So we decided that let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
And at least we still survive, and it's been 5 years.
Yeah. We actually got to this part of the world where you're at. I mean, you've been in Slovenia for 5 years, right?
Here, 6.5.
We actually came here right after Turkey, Armenia, Georgia. We went some other places, and we came here because I was always interested in this part of the world, because I was a basketball player in college and in high school, and I was during the time when all the Yugoslav guys were, when Dražen Petrovic, Stojakovic, Vlade Divac, Tony Kukoc, all those guys. I was always interested in this part of the world, so that's why we wanted to come here. Shireen had her own story too.
Mine wasn't so exciting, actually. I just remember when I was a kid, and then all of a sudden I heard that, oh, you know the country where Mother Teresa is from? It's gone now. So I always remember Yugoslavia, but we wanted to come here actually to explore the wines of all the ex-Yugoslavia countries, but we really fell in love with Croatian wine.
Yeah, we were gonna write our second book, actually our third wine book about the whole ex-Yugoslavia, but we kind of just focused in on Croatia since the fact that there's so many indigenous grapes.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are coming here, not this year, but 15 to 17 million people a year, and really a lot of exciting stuff happening.
Well, you guys are still like welcome to do the whole former Yugoslavia in a book. I think actually that would be fantastic if you could do that. So what is the book called that you did write on only Croatia?
So here you go. This is the cover, Cracking Croatian Wine, a visitor-friendly guide. I hope you can kind of see the cover. This is actually a picture of a vineyard in Brač.
Which you take your people to.
Yeah, yes.
Right?
Oh, okay. I was looking at that and I was wondering, like, is that Pelja shots? But no, okay, that's Brač. Is that Stina? Is that Stina?
Yeah,
it's so stunning how it falls right into the Adriatic Sea.
And we actually, but that book was pretty well received. Actually, Jancis Robinson's reviewed all of our books. Some of the first book, not so good reviews, but people still buy it, still use it, about Georgia, Turkey, Armenia. But this one was well received. We spoke about Croatian wines all over the world, all around Europe, New York City. It's been a pretty amazing journey.
So what with the book, was it published about 2 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, about less than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And it's still like in print and available.
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and people emailing, buying it all the time, thanking us for, what's really cool about writing some of these books. We were working on a Hungarian book next, but that has kind of slowed down because of the situation. But getting a lot of people that have moved away, like maybe Croatian ethnicity, or these countries have these ethnic ties, but don't really know about their homelands. We get a lot of those emails, which is kind of rewarding, saying that they feel like they're reconnecting, they've had this reconnection with their motherland. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
I noticed that with wine importers in the U.S. when I would talk with them, the ones who would import wines from Croatia or former Yugoslavia, that a big percentage of their business was the people that are trying to reconnect. The thing that is just it's crazy, and I don't know if you've noticed this because, well, let's say you guys travel back. I mean, I know right now you're kind of, let's say, stuck here, relatively speaking, but you're usually like traveling here and then back to the States or back to Singapore or
all over Mexico. We spent some time in Mexico, those wine regions. Most of the time we're around Europe because 80 to 85% of the world's wine is made in Europe. So we're most of the year in Europe.
Yeah, so before I was living in Slovenia, I started my tour company in 2005. So I would just come over 2 or 3 times a year, run some tours, and go back. And back in the States, it was fairly easy for me to get Croatian, Slovenian, a little bit of Bosnian, even some Montenegrin wines online. Then when I moved here, I realized, oh crap! If I want to go get Brkić, I'm like, I have to drive 7 hours to Bosnia. I cannot actually just go on the internet and be like deet 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 and have it. And it's actually funny sometimes in the States, depending on the situation or what state you're in, it's easier to get wines. And here it's like in Slovenia, it's a lot of Slovenian wines. And if there's international wines, it's not probably going to be like their old neighbors in Yugoslavia's wines. I mean, some Croatian wines, sure, but otherwise not so much.
No, it is really funny how all these countries are so close together. And when I'm in different countries, I would like to, sometimes I have a craving, or sometimes I want to do a tasting, we can do tastings, with friends or professionally, whatever, compare some of these wines. It's just impossible to get neighboring countries' wines. It's really a shame. I think the only place in ex-Yugoslavia that has a decent collection is Serbia. They have everybody's wines, and then obviously they have their burgeoning wine industry, and the wines are fantastic as well.
Oh yeah. Well, Belgrade is so much larger than well, where I'm at. I think there's more people in Belgrade than all of Slovenia, or
Yeah,
something, something close to that. I noticed the same thing too with food. Actually, well, it was more that way before I lived here. Things have changed now, just because everyone's opening up to the whole craft food or craft beer or what have you, and getting, let's say, trying to get more exotic restaurants or food in. But when I moved here, people would ask me like, well, what are you going to miss the most about Seattle? And I was like, the Asian food. Just just because
Maybe
there's
the Mexican food as well.
Here's a hot tip for whoever's coming to Zagreb. Shireen found a place called the Peking Duck. It's not. It's a Croatian word, not the English word. Imports all the Asian spots. So she's been going on a cooking spree because we miss Asian food so much.
Yes, and Mexican food, I would say as well. Although there's a great Mexican place in Split. American guy has a place in Split, and yeah, every time I'm in Split, I tell everyone like, all right, guys, this is a really good wine bar. Get some tapas here. Try whatever. Like if it's a free afternoon for lunch, I'm like, I am so getting just tacos or burritos or whatever, because like for a while it'll be like, this is like twice a year I'm in Split, so I got.
What's the name of the place?
It is Toye Taco. This is
Taco.
Thank you for
Yeah.
we spent 3 months in Mexico in the wine regions, eating great. Oh my gosh, we're just south of San Diego in the Ensenada, in Baja California, and that's just I've always loved Mexican food. Just something I miss when I was living in Asia. Here, it's just if you find 60 or 70% of the closeness, then you're happy.
they will probably add Kaya taco or Ivor.
There's a burrito plate chain that opened in Belgrade, and I tasted it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this tastes like a Balkan kebab. This doesn't taste like anything Mexican burrito."
Yeah, there's a good place in Ljubljana that I think it's been here for about a year and a half. The owners from Mexico, and they actually have homemade salsas, and that would be like the big thing. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. So, but that's what when you're in these countries, and I don't know, maybe it's because, they were smaller countries and they're newly independent, but it's like, you can get so much great food here, but it's like, doesn't matter. If I'm in Italy after 2 weeks, I'm like, I need some meal that's not Italian. I'm sure if I was in India or Lebanon, I would be the same way, because those are like my favorite foods, but I need something else. And it's harder. Now it's easier, but it was hard to find something other than the great stuff you have in the country you live in.
We've noticed a difference just in the last 2 years. I mean, we're in and out of the region over the last 2 years. Just noticed a huge difference. So,
yeah. Well, it's one of those nicety things. Just like, I mean, everything else. I'm guessing if you were here 10 or 15 years ago, trying to write this book, like what your thoughts on Croatian wine as a whole would have been then as compared to now.
And it's so funny because for people that don't know, of course, all these countries are only 20 something years old, really became independent in the 90s. I have to say, because obviously all the countries, Slovenia, Croatia are kind of out in front of everybody, but, and they've improved drastically. When we go back now, and we've been tasting the last couple of years, Croatian wines, 10, 15 years old, a lot of them have aged surprisingly well. I'm quite shocked.
So that would be one thing I wanted to ask you about and let everyone know. So when you're not writing the Croatian guidebook, it seems like, because I just see, I just get the blurbs on Facebook where you're at or this or that. What else are you doing? Because it seems like you're getting invited to, like, I don't know, the Balkans wine tasting thing or this wine festival. So when you're not writing specifically just for your own book, what other things are you doing?
So we do research full time. We travel, and then now we can't travel, so we are tasting from all over the world. We get samples. We meet up with friends to do tasting as well. The entire process is we usually do research first, and then when we see a country that's doing relatively well with good demand from people, and in terms of the standard, they are there and they're exported as well, that's when we get into deciding that we're going to write into a book, which was what we decided for Hungary. But now that again, our Hungary project is in pause, So we're now basically just creating content, free content on our website. So we have articles, videos that is free for all for everybody to learn about wine.
Yeah, so and we cover all countries. I mean, we cover Italy a lot of the exotic regions of Italy that people don't know about. In Sardinia, a couple times a year, Puglia, all Valle d'Aosta. We're cover some weird regions, France, Portugal a lot. So Austria, Hungary, Slovakia.
That's the thing about what we call exotic wine, right? Because I think even in the most famous wine countries like Italy and France, there are pockets of places that are still lesser known. I mean, take for example, Muscadet in France. There are so few people enjoying those wines, and you can buy like a 10-year-old Muscadet for 15 euros or something.
Even for me, a lot of regions of France are exotic. I mean, anything probably besides Burgundy, Bordeaux, and the Rhone is exotic because none of those other regions are ever covered or visited.
Yeah.
I mean, when's the last time anybody's had a Gaillac?
Exactly. Yeah. And I was going to say Puglia, I was just there for the first time, well, right before everything kind of shut down earlier this year. And yeah, I was looking, you know, I'm totally new. I have far less wine knowledge than you guys do, and I have never had any Pulian wines that I, you know, specifically went out and tried. Maybe I had a few, and I tried some, went to some wine shops, and I was looking at prices, and I was like, am I in Italy? Are these prices correct? Because like I think it's cheaper to buy wine in Puglia than it is like where I live in Slovenia. And I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, not everything is, you know, not everything is priced the normal Italian wine prices.
No, and that's what our aim is too, is to help people find the best value, value for money wines that you should be seeking out. Puglia is up there. We also go to the high profile regions, Napa, Bordeaux, that type of stuff, because you always need contrast. You always we have to show the readers that we have some credibility, that we're not only just drinking the weird wines.
I think when we talk about pain points of wine travelers or wine lovers who travel around the world, I think most of us can relate to this. So our book is meant to solve a very specific problem. When you go to a wine country, maybe you have 5 days, maybe you have like 2 weeks at best. Sometimes you are on tours, like with people like you can come to different regions and introduce them to certain wines. But the thing is, they will still be left alone for dinners or lunch sometimes. And looking at a menu in a different language can be so overwhelming. So if for someone who really wants to make the best use of their time and appreciate every single meal, you know, they can simply pull out our guidebook and figure out, okay, what are the wines that I can try? What are the wines I can pick out from the menu? So that's the purpose. We want to help our readers to save money and time. Even for our articles as well, that's what we do. We make it practical so people can pull out certain recommendations and they know what to do when they're at a restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because that would be, I mean, I would, if I had a book like yours, just for like a small version for Puglia or other places, because I get so used to where I'm at. Like, if I don't know the winemaker, like I know all the wines, I know of the winemaker, I know what I want, I know what this goes with this for, let's say, you know, 3 or 4 of these kind of small ex-Yugoslav countries. And it's like, okay, it's hard for me to think like, oh, what if I was just here the first time? Like, you know, and then as soon as I'm in another place, I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm like people on my tour, they're like, what is Tehran? What is this?
Yeah.
And I was like, because to me it's just it's so second nature now. Because to be honest, like even though I lived in Washington State, and that's the second largest wine producing state in the U.S., like I was a beer guy. Like I got into wines because I kept coming over here and I enjoyed things, and people were like, oh, this is really good. And and it's very different from, of course, what most people would have in the US from, let's say, the typical European wine producing countries. So it's like my knowledge is really based on the places I go here, which is why it's great, because when I'm reading you guys, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I could learn something about this French chateau or this place or these other places that are famous that, like, you know, I know very little about, or I think that I can't afford to be drinking.
Well, thanks. That's what the goal is. That's the goal. That's what our aim is.
So we'll jump into Croatian wines and varietals. You guys could talk about some of the things you like and also do a little virtual tasting with people. But let's take out I'm in Slovenia, you guys are in Croatia and have the Croatia book. Let's take out those two countries. What would be a country that has a really good up and coming wine scene that, let's say, in the last few years you've been like either surprised by or just like, oh, we need to track this more? I mean, I know there's probably more than one, but if you had one place to recommend, like for people to keep an eye on, what would you have?
I have two countries but in mind, but Shireen, you can go first probably.
I think a lot of people have been talking about it already, but I really do believe that Portugal is a country to look out for because of the value in each wine. You can get vintages that and they're released much later as well at a very good price. And I find that Portuguese wine, they are made accessible for a lot of people. And of course, there are different styles of wine as well, the full-bodied sort and also the higher acid, mineral white wine as well.
Yeah, I agree with. I love Portugal so
Mhm.
much. I think for even more exotic countries, the two that stand out to me are Hungary and Portugal. Sorry, and Moldova.
Moldova, what
I
you
think
say,
Moldova
yeah.
is very
Yeah.
is very
Yeah.
mixed and very low price wines. I actually think that this triangle. I think in Eastern, kind of Central Eastern Europe, I think Slovenia, Hungary, and Croatia to some extent are kind of the highest above
Mhm.
everybody
Yeah.
else right now, as it goes right now. But Moldova is even further east, and the quality is very high. There's not very many producers. The quality is exceptionally high.
On that note, coming from Singapore and I go to Hong Kong a lot, I know that Slovenian wine has a pretty good reputation in Hong Kong and Singapore.
Because the wine are fantastic,
Yeah.
as you know.
Nice. You know, Moldova was one of those COVID casualties for me because I was going to be there in late March, just with a couple had been with me before, and I said they wanted to go to Romania, and I was like, okay, can we like at least do a day in Moldova? Because if nothing else, I have to try some wine in Moldova, and I have to go to one of those places. Not so much for the wine, but just I want to be able to drive the car through those massive wine cellars that I've heard about. Have you been to one of those places?
Been to all of them.
Yeah,
We've been to all of them. Some are humongous. Yeah, you drive the whole car through the cellar. It's pretty insane. Oh, drinking water, not wine.
Yeah, my wife's actually Russian, so I've learned, like what the Soviets used to like, and I believe almost all of their champagne came from
Krikova.
Soviet Moldova, which would explain like why such a small. I mean, Moldova is so small and it's so obscure. I think that might be the most obscure country other than Belarus, and Moldova is not in the news, so it's even more obscure. But it's so small, but it has those massive wineries. It just kind of blows my mind.
Well, it's got it's tiny. It's got 3 times the vineyard area than Slovenia does.
Mhm.
3 times.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
God!
It's the
I'm
largest.
getting the hell out of Slovenia then, I guess.
It's the largest. It's the country that the normal population is employed by or has to do with wine. It's like the largest proportion in the world.
Yeah, really? Okay. Wow, I didn't know that, because it's so tough when you haven't been to a place, and a place like that, you're like, okay, there's the capital, which okay, that doesn't look so interesting. Then I know there's some big there's some big wine producers there and some big cellars, and that's it. It's just so, but yeah, it's so off the beaten path. So
There are some outstanding wines to be. I mean, really outstanding, top-notch wines to be had there.
mm. All right. Okay. Well, then that's good. That's good. I will. But I'm guessing like when you had these wines, it's always been pretty much in Moldova.
Outside too. Our first time was actually when we were judging competitions. We come across these Moldovan wines are sent all over the place. That's when we first tasted them.
Yeah, so we tasted in Romania. It was available in a wine bar in Romania. And also, again, coming from Singapore, I know that Moldovan wine is actually available in Singapore.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to do after we've wrapped up is at some point I want to put up some links. Obviously, I mean you guys have your link to your Facebook, but I'd love because I've had clients from Singapore and they've asked me like, hey, where I can get wines from these countries or that country. So I try to do that. If anyone's listening, tuning in, or has questions, I'll answer them later on, but I also love to give out some links for people to find even some wine importers in the States, because most of us the watching are in the States right now.
Yeah.
Get some good ideas for that. Okay, so enough about Moldovan wines, although now I'm quite curious about it. Let's talk about Croatian wines. You guys, you guys tell me, what do you really like? What were the wines that you maybe didn't even try until you got here, or the ones that kind of captivated you or kind of got your attention?
I think to make it useful for everybody watching. So if you're coming to the country for the first time, most of the time people want to taste local grapes, local wine, right? Not even though there are some delicious Merlot, Cabernet blends, some Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, but Croatia's got 140 indigenous grapes. And the ones you got to know mostly for white, Krasavina, which makes a fresh white wine. Bigger, kind of a bigger bodied white wine. And what we have here, one of Shireen's favorite is Malvasia. Malvasia Istriana.
Istria Malvasia, so it's different from the other Malvasia. It's a strain from the Istria part, so which is also available in Slovenia.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's for me is like that's the go-to wine. Like that's the easy thing to like if you're not so adventurous but you want to try something local, like you can't go. You can't, if you pick a good producer, you can't go wrong with that.
This is my favorite example. We're actually drinking it. I actually like Malvasia Istriana or Malvasia Starska when it's made into an orange wine, which is trendy for people nowadays. This is producer this is my favorite. This is Klai. This is the Sveti Yakov, made from old vines. And you want to show the color? I don't want to.
So this is made in the orange style, macerated on the skin for about 2 months. So which means that usually when you make white wine, you press the juice off the skin immediately, whereas this stays on the skin after for 2 months before it gets pressed. And the color of the wine comes from the skin. That's how we get red wine, and this is how the white wine turn orange. Before we get to this wine, I think it's important for people to know when it comes to Istria Malvasia, like exactly you said, there is the easier, more accessible style where it's fruity, citrusy, floral, very light, easy to drink with great acidity. And then you go into the middle part where maybe it's in a little bit of oak, and then you get this Chardonnay-esque, more yogurty kind of body. Whereas now when we're looking at this, it's towards the extreme end, which makes this grape so interesting because it goes from the lighter style to this extreme end where you get a bit of tannins, you get a little bit of this bitterness, what we call phenolic on the finish. You get really full body and you have amazing, I would say this almost smells like perfume because it's so intense on the nose.
I think for where you are, I think this little corridor of the world, Slovenia, where you are, especially Western Slovenia, Eastern Italy, Kolio and Istria, both Slovenia and Croatia, you have to try orange wines when you're in this part of the world because it's a specialty.
Yeah, it is, and I didn't realize really how much we have compared to elsewhere. I don't know if you know Simon Wolf, but he wrote the Amber Revolution book on orange wines, and we actually did a tour a couple of years together. And it was like when I was reading his book, going, "Wow, like Slovenia is a really small country," and like I think. Was it like other than Italy, Slovenia had seemingly like the biggest chapter of with orange winemakers, and it's something that trendy or not trendy or what, I mean, people have to try it because it's not just that a lot of great winemakers are making it here, but it really restarted here, let's say.
No, I have a story about this wine in particular. I just thought of this. This is so funny because this is a little bit for more people that are more geeky. We were drinking this exact wine in New York City with collectors. It was a Croat American wanted to show some of his country's wines, and it was Barolo and Nebbiolo night. So we were drinking really high class cult wines, and they brought out this Sveti Yakov Malvasia. And I remember one we were tasting also a very famous producer, a Nebbiolo. And one of the guys, he was a lawyer. He was looking at it. He was smelling this orange wine. He was smelling the Nebbiolo. He tasted it. He had a confused look on his face. And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, he's pointing to the Malvasia. He's like, "This is more structured than this, than the Nebbiolo, which is one of the most structured grapes on the planet." So
with Malvasia, like it's funny. Normally I would, in a normal year, I would be, I don't know however many tours I would have done by now, and it's right around, let's say, mid-September when I'm at wineries with my guests, and I'm like, you know what, the fresh Malvasia is done with. Like, I'm like, you guys drink it, you try it, you're here. I'm like, I've had it. Like, summer is over. It's this thing that just always snaps in me. Like, I just cannot drink any more freaking fresh wines. You know, it's like I love it. I mean, in this year, I wish I was in the position to be like, God, I'm so sick of all these fresh wines. I want, it's autumn. Let's get some, that's like, I always think of like, that's when I know, like, that's for me is like when the autumn season hits, is like, okay, let's put away the fresh Malvasia for Andrew, and let's get him something else like this.
Yeah. And then for red grapes, I would think. Anyone want to say anything else about this wine?
No, go ahead, move on.
You want to pour a little in here so you don't have to drink it all?
You can pour it in yours.
And now, Ed, can you guys talk a little bit on, because I'm sure you've had some. Have you had the Malvasia, the one in Dubrovnik, the one near Dubrovnik?
Yeah, the Malvasia Dubrovačka.
Dubrovačka.
It actually is. This is hardcore wine geek stuff. It's actually that grape is actually Malvasia di Lipari, which is famous for the Lipari wines. The island of Lipari in Sicily. It's the same. It's the same grape. It's different than Malvasia Istriana, but I think the wines made in a fresher style are quite impressive.
Yeah, it has actually really nice body with good acidity. So it's surprising. And it's, again, a very good summer wine, but also when you made it into a fuller body style, it can take you through your autumn as well, Andrew.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I've had it a little bit. I've never visited a winemaker there. So, for me, it's like, not just the wines I drink, but like who I've met, because you learn so much more just with that. And I haven't had that experience that like Dubrovnik and South is like, that has its own, let's say, allure for visitors. But like, I think like as soon as you go south of Shots, it's like, okay, like there's probably good wineries there, but it seems like Dubrovnik kind of like captures everyone's attention. So I haven't really gone out and checked out vineyards and winemakers in that area.
There's a handful. There's about south of Dubrovnik. There's about 3 to 4 producers at a high level. There's a lot of producers because Croatia, there's tons of producers, but there's about 3 or 4 doing it at a high level. So you want to talk about red grapes?
Which one do you want to move to?
We're going to taste this, the Plava.
Okay.
For red grapes, for people, definitely your specialty since you're there, Taran and Rafosco up in Istria and Slovenia. Also, we're not going to taste it. We have one from Clyde. Also, we love this producer. He's one of our favorite producers, not only in Croatia, the world. This is Ottocento red. This is a blend of Merlot and Rafosco. You take your clients to Clyde, by the way?
I do, although I have to say I probably had more of my clients go to Piquentum, his other, Dimitri's other place, just because how many times are you going to go to like a 1920s Italian water supply like bunker place to drink your wines, and Buzet is such a nice hill town. So but the thing is always is because Dimitri's doing 2 wineries, it seems like he's running 2 wineries. It's kind of hard to there's certain times of the year where it's like I don't even want to call him because he's way too busy with doing wines. Let's face it. So,
and then the red grape Croatia is most famous for. I'll leave it to Shireen because she's so passionate about this grape.
So the flagship red grape of Croatia, I would say, is Plavac Mali, which is grown in Dalmatia. What you would expect is tannins. When it's well made, right, it would still be firm, lightly astringent, but I can go towards Aglianico, Nebbiolo kind of tannin. So you do expect, if people who like tannins, you really appreciate it. And of course, coming from Dalmatia, you're expecting Mediterranean flavors, so you can get a little bit more riper fruit. The cool thing about Plavac Mali is, despite being tannic and full body, it actually has a lot of red fruit flavor when it's done well. So you're expecting strawberry, you're expecting cherry, you're expecting rose. And that's a very nice contrast that makes Plavac Mali such an interesting wine that I can assure you, when you taste Plavac Mali, you will say that this is not like anything I've tasted before. Some of the best examples also deliver garlic taste, which is kind of like this dry Mediterranean flavor, Mediterranean flavor. Sometimes even anchovy. So you're really expecting this whole spectrum of flavors from herbaceous to fruity to I would say like a umami flavor as well, which makes it very, very interesting. And we have an example here.
Do you? Most of your clients are Americans, right? Most people that go on tour with you.
The majority are, but I have about 40% Australians actually. So
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So people that just before I show the producer, I think you take people that, but for people that don't know, they're Americans that love Zinfandel. Zinfandel is originally Asian and Montenegrin, along the coast,
yeah.
where it's called Tribodrager Sordianek Kastelinski.
Oh, hold on a sec. Hold on, because I swear to God, there's one word in Croatian. I mean, it's a little easy for me to say Croatian words compared to the tourist, but that the other word for the drag is something I always try saying it, and I'm just like, oh, screw it. I cannot.
Let's
say
practice
that
it
word.
now.
What do we can say? Cyril Yanek
Salianak.
Kastelansky. Just think of it like a Russian, like your
Oh,
wife.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Sounds like a
know,
Russian
but
guy.
I swear that is like my tongue twister. I'm like, yeah, like the granddad for the
just say
Zinfandel.
Cyril, just say Cyril Yanek.
Sorry,
And then
yeah.
people, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. You got it.
Just so anyways, we have I think you know this winery, Stina. This is also there's nothing on the label. It's just a white
It's a
label.
white-
with stone.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
now you probably know why do you think it's just a white label? Do you have an idea?
Because the island of Brach used to be known for this mining white stones. And
Yeah.
if you go to the winery, just the old cooperative, it's all these beautiful white stones. So the label's beautiful. It's just white stone with it engraved here. This is the Plavec Mali Maistor, one of their top wines. I think it's one of the, even though it's not from kind of the spiritual homeland of Plavec, it's one of the better examples.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about Plavac Mali. There are so many producers, and there are a lot of producers who are still trying to learn about their own grape varieties to make it in a more accessible and international style as well. So I think with Stina, they nailed the part in the vineyard and also nailed the part in the cellar as well. So it's something that makes it very accessible. I wanted to go back to the white stone thing that you were talking about, because for the American audience, the white stones of Braj was actually sent from Croatia to America to build a White House.
Yeah, part of it's
Yeah.
Brach stone. So
Yep, exactly, and you can still go to some of these little villages in the interior of the island and see these people working on stones. I mean, there's some really amazing what you call it, like galleries just of this Brach stone. So yeah,
do you like Plavec Mali being?
Okay, so here's my thing. I'm very, because for everyone watching, I didn't ask them. I didn't know you guys told me you were gonna have Clyde, but I didn't ask like all the wines you were gonna have. So for me, I'm kind of surprised you picked Stina, or let's say something from Brach. But that's fine, because I feel kind of guilty, but most of the Plavats I like is more stuff I would find on Brach or Hvar, because Plavats from Peliashots, it is so strong. It has so much alcohol, and I like wine, but I really like it with food. And that stuff, I just in general, for the most part, it's hard for me to drink it with food. So I'm gonna have a half a bottle of that wine from Stina, easily. And otherwise, if I go to most Peliashots producers, I'll have Plavats and I'll just have a glass. But it's weird. It's like the island version of Plavats to me seems in general very, very, let's say, mellow or easy to get into than the hardcore stuff on Peliashots.
I think for this is geeky stuff for those that don't know. So what happened? The problem with Plavec Mali is the grapes don't ripen evenly. So we have pictures. We were there recently. We have red berries and green berries. You can't make wine with green berries. So on Peliashots, they let them ripen so much where you have some ripe berries and some raisins. So then there's more sugar, and then that's going to equal more alcohol.
But that's also the cool thing as well about people coming to Croatia, because even with the same variety, when you go to different islands, you're really experiencing different kind of wines, and you really taste what people may call the terroir in the wine as well.
I generally tend to agree. Hvar, Brach, Komarna, which is on the mainland, but it's a new region, make lighter, more drinkable Plavets. Do you take people to Vis ever? Have you been to Vis?
Yeah, I've been to Vis, and not so often, because I mean, part of the allure is it's so far away, not everyone
Yeah.
go there. But you know, so you're like, hey, let's do a 3.5 hour ferry ride. But yes, I have, and yes, I've had a Vugava there and Plavac there, and I really, if Vis was 1 hour from the coast like Brach, well, it would totally probably destroy the island. But then I probably would go to Vis more. It's just you know, it's a matter of time.
It's a great, fantastic terroir for Plavac Mali. Producers are very simple, kind of rustic, but I think there's tons of potential there. Who knows if that potential comes to fruition, because the ferry ride and all that stuff, you can't even find it's very hard to find wines from Vis in Zagreb even. There's only 1 or 2 restaurants that actually have wines from Vis.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one thing that I've noticed is if you go to an island and you like any wine from an island, you should buy it there, drink it there. I mean, even if you're not going to bring it back home to the U.S., you know, you want a bottle for later on, because it seems like whatever like Brach or Bar, and these islands are really small. I haven't been to Greece, but I just know that there's the size of the population so much smaller on Croatia that everything just stays on the island. And even getting like Brach olive oil is really good, but that's also like you don't see that around.
Really. I would tell people, anybody that visits, you're right. If you like something, especially if you're making a tour of the country, you're not going to find Istrian wines in Dalmatia.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find Dalmatian wines in Istria. The only place really is Zagreb, but a lot of people, it's not on high on the tourist list. People fly to the airport and then they head off to the coast.
It really is. I mean, it might be the best place, like, hey, after you've gone to all the regions and tasted all these different wines, and now you want to get that extra suitcase to get 40 pounds of wine back home. Like that might be the best place to go to actually get everything, because it seems it does. There's a few wine shops in Split that I will usually I don't spend so much time there, but when my guests are at Diocletian's Palace, I'm going to the wine shop and I'm like, okay, I'm not taking the ferry to these islands. So what do they have from these islands? You know, doom, just so I can share them with people, because like you said, it's so hard to get in, and you know, you're 1 hour away and even shorter if you just like as a crow flies, and it's hard to get this stuff there.
You know, that's another inspiration behind our books, actually, especially the Croatian book. There's so much fantastic wine that's hard to get. And you have to sift through a lot of, you go to local canobas, a lot of times you're served the house wine, which is quite bad, made by some guy's cousin in the backyard. It's real rustic, and people walk away with the impression that, oh, Croatian wines are terrible, which is it's not the case. It's just the best wines you need to sift through, and you really need to know, because people don't understand. Also, Croatians themselves are huge wine drinkers, just like Slovenians. So
I think we're always like in the top 4 or 5 countries in the world for consumption per capita. So
so a lot of the best wines are taken, especially in Croatia, by tourists and then by the locals, and that leaves not much for export.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Have you guys been to Pog Island?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you? I know you. I don't need to ask if you've been to Boškanac, but I was
For us, best restaurant.
Yeah, for us, it's the best restaurant.
It's
in
best
Croatia.
restaurant in Croatia.
Okay. Yeah. It's something special. And once again, even though it's really not far away, and it's not even very far from the mainland, it's just like I guess it's like the best things are like it's like the journey is the hardest to get to. So it kind of like says, okay, everybody and your brother, like you can't come here because it's just not really next to everything else. So you have to make that extra effort to get there. But yeah, I really enjoy their wines, their food, the whole. It's like one of those like like they've got everything there. So you just show up and it's like, okay, great. We're going to have the amazing dinner. We've got the wines, we have the location, the olive oil is really great there. So
for those people that may watching don't know, it was actually featured on the late Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations when he came to Croatia, and he was blown away. I remember the episode, he's drinking the Boškanac red and he's like, this wine is bleeping awesome, right?
yeah. I think he also said like, I'm a bleeping idiot for not coming here sooner.
But anyways, it's now a 1 Michelin star. Just got a Michelin star this year. We haven't been this year. We usually are there every year. Just really everything's local. Everything's from Pog Island. Pog's famous for cheese. It's probably the only cheese in it's a protected. It's a cheese with protected origins. So it's just a phenomenal cheese with blended sheep and cow milk.
And I think you can get that now in some places in the States. I know I think one of the places in the Pike Place Market in Seattle was carrying hog like
Ooh.
5 or 6 before I left, because I remember someone telling me that they saw it there. So yeah, it's like little by little. God knows how much it would cost in the States just to get a little chunk, but you know,
Weird enough, so funny you mentioned Pike's Place. I worked at Starbucks for about 6 years, actually. The first Starbucks right there in Pike's Place, I was actually there too as
Oh.
well.
did not know that. So what are some let's go what would be some accessible wines you think that you could look for in the States? I mean, I've been gone for so long, I really have no idea. And unfortunately, one of the wine importers I knew the best, they've closed their shops at the end of last year. So I don't have so many great recommendations for like how Americans can get a hold of some of this wine.
So first of all, the 2 wines that we showed today are definitely available in the US, especially for Clyde, because the owners are actually based in New York. Definitely recommend people seek out. And then the second one will be Stina. I know that Matoshevich and Venuti both are in Istria. They are exported to the US as well. And both of them make Malvasia and also Terran. So those are very accessible, very good introduction, safe introduction to Croatian wine.
I think that actually also there's 3 resources people can go for in the States. You probably talking about Blue Danube, the guy that closed down. His former employees are now started a company called Duncan Granger.
Oh, okay. That's I did not know that. Okay.
Duncan Granger has selection from all over Eastern Europe. Also, .com. A lot of Dalmatian wine can be shipped right to your door in the States. And then we actually have a partner called The Wine and More. We actually have a discount code. Actually, if people want to use it for 10% off, and they can ship around the States, and there's a pretty decent selection there. So wineandmore.com, CroatianPremiumWine.com, DuncanGranger.com are 3 resources if people want to try Croatian wine. They have Slovenian wines too as well. So
oh yes, I think I have seen their site before, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll check for this region or this whatever. And I was like, okay, they have quite a bit, not just, so that would be, for those of you watching, I'll get the links from you guys right after we're done, and I'll put those up. And if you have a discount code you want to share, then I could throw that on there as well. What would be, let's say, I mean, and we've talked about some geeky stuff. What and I do have some people who they want to try the funkier, the geekier, the better. What like can you give me like one thing that's just like, here's something really strange, like really hard to find, but you've got it in your book, something there that's like, once you've had your Plavats and your Malvasia and your Tiran and whatever, that you got to give a shot out if you want something a little bit different.
I would say Prošek, which is a sweet wine made in Dalmatia. What's really interesting about Prošek is, even when you go to homemade winemakers, they make excellent Prošek. The whole idea of Prošek is a wine for celebration. A lot of winemakers, professional winemakers and home winemakers, they make a Prošek and then they keep it for their child's wedding or 21st birthday or something along that line. So there is a deep tradition. It's almost like a homemade recipe secret. And it's really fun because it takes you to a different journey and different route when you start searching for Prošek, because that's when you go to people's house and you ask them, oh, do you have Prošek? Yeah.
I think that's a great book because I love sweet wines. Stina makes a Prošek actually. Being visitors.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
It's very rare, very rare.
Yeah.
So for me, all the producers, you take tours, you go and you visit a lot in Istria and Dalmatia on the coast. That's where most visitors in Croatia go. There are tremendous examples of food and wine and the continental portion of Croatia that people don't even think about. There's one producer that we love very much called Iningi. He was one of the first private producers in Croatia he's like 80 years old, just planted 10 more hectares, does everything himself. And you can find these wines in the supermarket. They have terrible labels, but one of his premier wines is called Viognier White, Viognier Bieli. And I remember giving it, it's so good. I remember giving it to an owner of a champagne house. And he said, I thought this was a Grand Cru wine from Alsace, France.
Whoa, this is probably somewhere in Slavonia, is that right? Or
Yes, Slavonia.
right.
And you can get this wine in the supermarket. And in the supermarket, it's like 15 euros. And it's just tremendous, tremendous wine. It's a blend of, I think, Gewürztraminer, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, Grashevina, and maybe there's a little Chardonnay. It's a single vineyard blend. Age is always aged. So the current vintage on the shelf is like 2008 or 2010.
for
Just
15 euros. Wow.
Phenomenal wine. Just outstanding wine.
I think I need to create with you guys some kind of like, okay, because people like going to grocery stores when they travel. I mean, I think you guys are the same way. It's like, let's see what they got here. Would be great to be like, what's some really good steals? Like, it's like, like fantasy sports, like who's the steal of the draft? It's like, who is the steal?
Yeah.
What's the steal of the grocery stores? Because a lot of times you're like, it can't be that good, especially at this price or whatever. And you would just be like, I'll just buy it at the winery. But I'm sure there probably are some really good things.
There's, one, we actually showed this in a master class. Sharina's, we're also good friends with the winemaker. It's one of the biggest producers in Croatia, biggest producer in Istria, but don't let that fool you because the wines are good. Vina Laguna Malvasia. You can get it on the shelf sometimes 3 to 5 euros, and it's wonderful fresh wine. I mean,
even the bag and box is good.
Yeah. I talked to a winemaker, a wine writer from Austria a guy that worked for Falstaff magazine, pretty famous magazine. And he said that he liked it so much that he bought 6 cases when he came on holiday to take back to Austria.
Yeah, that one is when it's because I see it all the time I've had it. I've seen it all the time on the menu, and sometimes I'm like, it's so inexpensive. It's like if I order this, what do people think? They're like, oh man, he's going with the cheapest Malvasia on the menu, and that's why you're like, don't look at the menu, like But it's like it is really good, and I know it is. That it's a bigger producer, and of course I'm always trying to give as much money as I can to the small producers. But that's a really really good value wine.
It's so funny in Croatia because it's all small producers, just like Slovenia. When I say big producer, I think Vina Laguna this is going to sound big to people, makes like 1 million bottles a year, which sounds humongous. And it is for Croatia. But when you're talking about champagne houses, when you're talking about France, Spain, that's nothing. That's a tiny winery compared to some of these.
It's not like some like factory, like, okay, we're having robots doing 24 hours a day, just bottling things up. Yeah.
I mean, in North Macedonia, the southern part of ex-Yugoslavia, a medium-sized winery is 8 million liters a year, which is about, close to 12 million bottles a year. So,
wow. Yeah, that's I think there was something, I think it was you guys posted this on something about the which all the former republics and what the total percentage is, and I figured like Macedonia is going to surprise me, but whatever their percentage was of the total wine produced now in all these countries, I was like, holy crap, that's a lot. I mean, I guess it makes sense because I see Stobie red, for 3 euros a pop everywhere. So
Stobie's good actually, but I think they made statistically close to 80% of the wine in ex-Yugoslavia.
I think so, and I think now they must have like the 2 or 3 largest wine producers in.
I know they have the largest winery in southeastern Europe, and so that's including Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece.
Okay.
So there's some serious volume happening there.
So you look at Montenegro, it has the largest single plot vineyard that is like 2,540 hectares. It's a single plot, so you literally can't see the end. So
for people, I don't know, let's go by acres for if you're English. So my dad's a farmer, and we have a big farm for a lot of people over 1,000 hectares. That's 2,500 acres. So if you're talking about 2,500 hectares, we're talking that's close to 6,500 acres. it sounds big, and when you see it up close,
Yeah.
you're like, wow.
It will engulf you.
That's huge.
Well, I think I've driven by it because it's just like it's on Lake Skadar
Yeah.
in Montenegro, and that lake's huge, and you're just like, because I've driven by many times, and it's like, yeah, like because I always read that. I read like everyone's got this little like the biggest single plot, and I was like, yeah, like I can't even see. Probably it ends at the border with Albania or something like that. I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's there's some real, and you know what? It's not only that though. I think what Exact Wine Travel is all about really is there's so many inspiring stories to be had, and there's a lot of producers that are putting everything online, putting the bound in all parts of the world, and that's the stuff we want to share. Heck, we were in Thailand last year, and there's a guy that's spearheaded the Thai wine industry, and the wines are fantastic. There's so many interesting stories to be found all around the world, and fantastic wines. So I think people should always drink adventurously and never stop exploring.
Yeah, and also challenge perception as well. Just like as we were talking about it, Plantage in Montenegro makes some of the best Branas. And then Stovi in North Macedonia making some of the best wine. We have Vina Laguna making some of the best Malvasia. So I think it's also very important, especially for value-driven wine lovers. There's so many things, so many perceptions that we can challenge ourselves, and for us to always get into the discomfort zone to learn more and to taste more. Yeah.
And I think you can see this as well as as we kind of wind this down. I think if you're willing to try new things, wine, food, that shows the kind of person you are. And we need more. We need more of those people in the world.
Yeah.
People that are more open-minded to try different things, try new things.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I mean the whole experience thing is, I mean that's key. I mean, you guys review so much wine on your site. It's I mean, there's so many things like, oh, I haven't even tried this, let alone visit it. But there's so much good wine. I could say like but you have to with what you do, you probably sift through some of the other wines that are not so good. But it's like you have the good wines and the great wines, and then you can always find some of those that are tied with a really great experience, or just the kind of personal feeling you get from some of these places. Because one thing for sure in my experience is in Slovenia and Croatia, and a little bit with Montenegro and Bosnia, is winemakers can make a lot more time for you even when you're there in very, very small numbers.
Very true. Yeah.
Exactly. That really just adds to the whole experience, because these days, you're right. Actually, maybe less than 10% of the wines that we taste actually go up on our site. We taste a lot of we recommend the best. They taste a lot of crap, but there's never been a better time as a winer than right now. So much. I think nowadays, people, you can get good wines everywhere. People are looking for connection, experience, and being part of a story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Well, I tell you what, I would love to have you guys back on sometime to talk. For those people who want to go even a little geekier, I'd love to get on and talk about Georgian and Armenian wines, and some of those places there, because that's even, let's say, less discovered than Croatia and Slovenia and this kind of former ex-Yugoslav countries. So for everyone watching, I will get some links up for the sites they mentioned, and I'll have that up real soon. So in the next 10-15 minutes, people can check back on the site, and we'll have that. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate that. This was fun, but we gotta do it in person. Like, we gotta do something
In person.
the next time.
We'll drink some. I know you will. In person next time we see you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll bring it to like the places around where I'm at or whatever. So once the COVID borders go away, then we'll need to catch up in real time. So thanks for being on. Thanks everyone for watching, and Sarah will be back soon with her normal programming. But remember, we will always try to have some wine related thing on Wines Day. So take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.